library friends, Miss Becky here, and today I'm going to show you how to make mini Halloween pumpkins out of polymer clay. Polymer clay is a plastic-based clay that's really easy to use and store, but can still make professional-looking projects. We'll need to use an oven to bake our clay, so make sure you have a parent's permission before getting started. For this project, we'll need polymer clay. I use the Sculpey brand, and we'll need it in orange, green, white, and black. We'll need a baking sheet, tin foil, sculpting tools, but you can use a toothpick and a plastic knife, and an oven. We're going to start by making our pumpkin. For this, we'll use our orange clay, and we're going to start by rolling it into a ball. Since we're making many pumpkins, we don't need a ton of clay, so you can break some of it off and start working it in your hands. You'll notice that it's pretty easy to work and mold. If yours is a bit harder, it could be a little bit old, but polymer clay doesn't really completely dry out, so you might just need to work it with your hands a little bit more to get going. All right, once you have a ball, we're going to hollow out the center. We're going to add either a little cat or a ghost popping out of our pumpkin. So having the center hollowed out is really going to help with that. You can kind of just push your finger into the middle to get it hollowed out, and then pinch around the sides to get the shape that you want. Okay, so there we have our hollowed out center, but overall it still looks like a pumpkin. Now during that process you ended up with a lot of rough edges. This is a good time to smooth it out, either using your fingers or a sculpting tool like this, or a plastic knife if you don't have a sculpting tool. My edges are still pretty smooth, so I don't really need to do that part. And the last step is going to be adding ridges around our pumpkin. So you can use a sculpting tool or a toothpick for this, and you'll just draw them lightly into the clay. All right, that part is pretty easy, and we're ready to go on to the next step. Okay, so now we're going to add either a ghost or a cat to our pumpkin to give it that extra Halloween touch. If you're making a cat, you'll want to use black clay, and for the ghost, you'll want to use white clay. I'll show you how to do the ghost first. So to start, take a little bit of the clay and again work it and make it into a ball shape like we did with the pumpkin. Then for the ghost, we'll kind of want to elongate that by rolling it on a flat surface. So it's more of an oval type of ghost shape. For the cat, we'll take some black clay and we want to make 2 balls. These are going to stack on top of each other. You can kind of work out the shape. I think it's a little bit cuter when cats' heads are a bit of an oval instead of a perfect circle. Okay, so the next step before we add any features will be putting them inside of the pumpkin, because you'll want to make sure they're the right shape. So here you can see that this is a little bit too big, so I would want to make either my pumpkin a little wider or my cat's neck a little narrower. but my ghost is a pretty good shape, so I'll keep going forward with the ghost. Now that he's in there, you can work out the shape a little bit more. And you'll want to make sure he's really firmly in the pumpkin so that way after baking it doesn't break and fall out. Okay, next we'll add arms. So if you had a cat, you'll be doing the same thing. You'll be adding your arms there. And for the ghost, we're going to add them onto the side. So just take a little bit more clay and work them into the shape that you want. And then you'll attach them. And here, when you attach, you really want to smooth out your seams because these arms could easily break off after baking. So I find that smoothing out the seam between the arm and the body helps make it more secure. There's one arm. And now we'll do our next arm. And if you're making the cat instead, you'll make your arms in the same way, but place them lower, and then you'll want to do the same process for the ears as well. So once you get your arm in place, again, make sure to smooth out that seam. All right, our next step is going to be adding faces to our ghost and our cat. So you use the same method for both of them. We'll want black clay for the ghost, and for the cat you can use green clay. And when I made mine, I actually added a tiny bit of white to the green to make the eyes a little bit lighter. To make the eyes, you'll take a small bit of clay and roll it into a tiny ball, and then press it against a table or a flat surface so it's a circle. You might have to try a few times to get the shape that you want. Here, I feel like this is too big for my ghost's eye, but it's actually a really good size for the mouth. So I'll go ahead and press that into the ghost to be his mouth, and you'll want to press it really firmly, again, to make sure that it won't fall off after baking. For my eyes, I'll use smaller pieces of clay. Set him over there. And press them on my ghost. Those eyes are still a little bit big for my taste, but we'll leave it for now. The last step is going to be making a little hat for your figurine. I think this adds a really nice touch and kind of reminds you of a jack-o'-lantern, the way that you would carve off the top of the pumpkin, so that's why we have that there. So you'll take a little bit more orange, roll it into a ball, and again press it against the table. Then when we pick it up, we'll want to curve it just a little bit because the tops of pumpkins are curved. And then we can set it on our figurine and again push it in really, really firmly. You don't want these to just be lightly on because they will fall off after baking if they're not fully secured. And the last step is taking a little bit of our green clay to make a stem and a leaf. Again, make sure that those are really firmly secure and on there. You can blend in your seams just a little bit if you're afraid of them falling off. Okay, and if you want to, another optional step, if you have more black clay left over, would be to write out something like boo and put it on your pumpkin, or make a jack-o'-lantern face and put it on your pumpkin, but that's optional. When you're happy with your project, you'll want to bake it to harden the clay and make the shape permanent. You can bake your clay figures in an oven or a toaster oven. And baking times and temperatures vary depending on what type of clay you're using. If you're using Sculpey 3, which is what I'm using, then you'll set your oven to 250 degrees Fahrenheit and bake it for 15 minutes per 1/4 inch thickness. So if your figure is 1/4 of an inch wide, you'll bake it for 15 minutes, and if it's in 1/2 an inch, you'll bake it for 30 minutes. But it's best either way to just start with 15 minutes and then see how firm your clay is, because the baking times can really vary and you don't want to over bake your figurine because it could become burnt or very brittle. So when you're ready and your oven's preheated, set your figurine on a baking sheet and a piece of tin foil. Go ahead and lay it flat, and then you're ready to start putting it in your oven. And don't forget to set a timer. When you're all done, your figure will be harder, like these ones, and complete. I hope you enjoyed working with polymer clay and making this seasonal project. Be sure to share what you've made with the library on social media, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye!